Welcome to the video discussion about public policy. This is an introduction to public policy and will touch on some of the aspects of how it relates in the American government system. Please know that this is just an introduction and will not go into the many different pieces of what public policy is. So what is public policy? Well, scholars often argue about what this definition is. For the purpose of this class, we will focus on the notion that public policy includes the various ideas that communities create to help govern certain ideas for that community. This can include dog leash laws. It can include the course materials put out by the Board of Education. It can also include gun control policies and environmental policies as well. Public policy is impacted by the government levels. As we've been discussing in this course, there are 3 levels of the American government system: the local level, the state level, and the federal government. There's also international law that can impact various pieces of public policy in the United States. Some examples of local government, state government, and federal government and how they're impacted by public policies can include ideas like the Board of Education. The Board of Education is something that is handled at the local level of government. Public universities, like the University of Texas, is handled by the state government. And then there are other federal policies like financial aid that also impact public policies when it comes to education. The long and the short of it is there are various pieces of the government that impact public policy, and public policy in turn also impacts those government systems. Interest groups are another important piece of public policy. Interest groups are exactly what they sound like. They are groups of people or organizations through nonprofit organizations or agencies that represent an interest. So what this means is this is a group of people that have come together that are going to say, we are in support of this particular idea. So let's use ambulances as an example. Ambulances are in all of the communities across the United States, although there are some that do not have ambulances. Ambulances are also governed by state governments, and the federal government also has a stake in this because they also have an agency that overlooks ambulances. Because ambulances impact all 3 levels of the government, they have a lot of interest groups that push ideas through Congress to help them make things a little bit better for them where interest groups are concerned. An example of this is the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians. They represent individuals with EMT and paramedic licenses, including other aspects of emergency medical services. But then emergency medical services is also really involved in emergencies. So the International Association of Emergency Managers is also involved as an interest group with emergency medical services. Additionally, EMS can also include fire departments. So the International Association of Fire Chiefs might also be an interest group that is impacted and that pushes ideas having to do with emergency medical services. And finally, the Ambulance Association of America represents ambulance agencies throughout the United States. So they are also involved in the overall concept of emergency medical services. In short, these organizations come together, and sometimes they work on their own to get these different ideas that they need for public policy through Congress. A lot of times they will bring up bills or they will support bills to help get these new ideas moving through Congress. Pluralism is a scholarly term used for all of these interest groups coming together and sometimes working together to get these ideas through, or they argue and push their way to the top of the surface where only a few interest groups will work that concept through Congress as a bill. Overall, public policy includes many different pieces that are all very interesting for how they influence public policies in the United States. Public administration and agencies, for example, oversee a lot of the policies that Congress put forth through the various bills and laws that that are accepted in Congress and signed into law by the president. You just heard about interest groups, and interest groups have a huge part in educating the public on what the needs for a particular policy are, and the public in turn will go to interest groups asking for assistance to get policies a little bit better for them in these various communities. Congress is also a huge part of this as they work to create bills and pass laws to help make public policies better. And in turn, federalism, the pieces of the local, the state, and the federal government are all the overall system for how the American government works. Some policies will stay at the local level, some become state policies, and others become federal policies that keep it consistent throughout the United States. So I'm going to leave you with one concluding thought now that you've learned just a little bit about public policy. Do all public policies make sense from the federal level down to the local level of government? Will gun control policies in Connecticut, for example, be the same as those that should be in Texas? What about agriculture rules? Will the agricultural rules in Kansas make the same? Will they be the same, or should they be the same for residents of New York City? So think about it a little bit. Think about how public policies should go, and if all public policies should work their way from the federal level down to the local level and vice versa. Or does the United States have a way of creating public policies and keeping them at the different levels of government based on the needs of the people? I appreciate you joining me today for this introduction about public policy. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me.